The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN The Spin. Welcome to the Starfleet Podcast Network. I am Big J with Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm joined by Aaron with Tribbles and Transporters, Spanner and Alfie with Highly Illogical, and then we've got Strange Kirk, Tech Man 16, and Handy with Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. So here's what I'd like to talk about today. Now, I know that Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 7 just came out unexpectedly. Like it was, I don't know. Does anyone know why that just suddenly dropped? No notice, no announcement.
I'll ask you guys. Yeah, and is there like a US holiday coming up or something like that?
Probably because it's not a usual thing. So it's not like kind of like a Christmas episode or a Christmas special kind of thing where it just sort of, it doesn't really fit into their normal schedule. So they're like, fuck it, we're done. Just throw it out there.
I think it has to do with Comic-Con, by the way. Just throwing that up there.
Oh, okay. All right.
That could be.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
There we are. Problem, mystery solved.
Could I come in really quick?
Yes, Alfie, of course.
Hello. I just wanted to say I've joined right now just to say hello, everybody, because I miss you all.
We miss you too.
Oh, sweet. I have to say that.
Yeah.
But I actually haven't seen the episodes, so I won't stay for long because I don't want to ruin it for myself.
How far are you into Season 2?
I've season 1.5 episodes of Strange New Worlds, but I'm pacing myself because I like to, there's only so much content out there. So I like to really be in the mood and the spirit. And I like to, savor every moment.
It's a great excuse. It's fine.
Yeah,
So,
right.
I'm also a very busy person. No, I'm not.
I wasn't going to do this most recent episode in regards to part of the discussion because it was such a unannounced, unexpected launch and like everyone's hurrying to watch it. But because odds of anyone in the audience or here on the stage had a chance to even do that are pretty low. The topic I wanted to discuss really even wouldn't. It's definitely not going to spoil this most recent episode, the crossover episode, and it could be generic enough to where if you've only seen one episode of Season 2, shame on you, Alfie, for only being one episode in. But if that's the case, we might not spoil it too badly. But, because this is what I wanted to talk about. I guess I'll just throw that out there as to what it was. So far in Season 2, of course, we have Spock and we have Uhura, part of the main cast. Well, we've been getting some more of Kirk, played by Paul Wesley. And this iteration of Kirk, he is a lieutenant on the Farragut, which I have to say, I am glad that they're doing some more time with Kirk in a different role, different ship, different rank, because it feels like in the original series, we went from having some knowledge of when he was in the academy, maybe lieutenant-ish, and then suddenly he's a captain. Like there's this big gap in between where there was not a whole lot explored. And then it was hard to picture Kirk being anyone on a ship, any role but a captain. Like, okay, we haven't seen him as a lieutenant commander going through the ranks, not being in the center chair of the ship. So I like how they kind of took the character and maybe toned him down, like brought him back down to some grounded reality of he did have an early career. Yes, he was very skilled, very, very knowledgeable, but this isn't the Kelvin timeline. You don't go from cadet to captain in one day. We're not doing that.
You wanted to see his respect and credibility, right? And
we're seeing him earn it.
The badass captain that he was. Yeah.
Well, they did touch on, I'm not going to spoil it, but they did touch on the quick rise through the ranks. We remember that, right? I don't want to spoil it because Alfie's still hanging around with your non-episode watching ass.
Hey, I just want to point out there was a sequence where an ensign got promoted to first officer at the snap of a finger. Just saying.
Was it Harry Kim?
No.
No.
We wish. We wish, actually.
I mean, you said crossover episode. I don't know. That would have been amazing.
Crossover episode between.
I did actually write down some predictions that I have. So if you want to verify or deny, I can go ahead and give you. They're just very small bullet points.
It won't interfere with the temporal prime directive, will it?
Yeah, because see, we already have foreknowledge, and her predictions we could be like, you're way off, or
we're in danger of destroying our own future if we tell you.
We are.
Let's risk it.
I'm willing to take that chance.
Yeah. Okay,
right.
let's hear it.
So,
no facial expressions. We don't want to give it away too badly. So
yeah,
it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard on the four of us.
It's going to be hard on the Trek Talk gang, the non-camera gang.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Put your points of these. We're ready.
I'm just going to shoot them off all at once, and you can discuss them after if you
shoot your load.
Okay. A red alert, a strange world, an anomaly, some diplomacy, an ethical conflict, or a dragon.
Why not all of them?
Well,
pretty close. Pretty close.
I would have to say there's one to this point has not happened for sure.
I'm sorry. Did you just give the premise for Star Trek for Dummies?
Yeah, she did.
Dude, I am Star Trek for Dummies, so probably.
There are no Star Trek dummies. That's the thing. Anyone who's wise enough to spend their days just watching Star Trek
challenge accepted
is smart.
Yeah. Okay. All right, buddy. Yeah. I don't think any of you
Star Trek.
None of you play Star Trek Fleet Command, and it shows.
I do, but I stopped wasting my money on that son of a bitch game.
I mean, you must not talk to many people because, good God, I've seen lots of stupid.
Yeah. I've since moved on. Now I'm addicted to a Dragon Ball game. Anyway.
Oh, is it?
You just said Dragon
crossover with Strange New Worlds game?
Well, if there was a crossover with Dragon Ball, I think that it would lose everyone because it
could be called Game of Strange New Worlds.
Well, if you're going to incorporate Dragon Ball, it could be Game of Strange New Balls.
I'm in.
That's just one of those private clubs in Atlanta.
No, I think that's a porn for sure.
Like the Blue Oyster Club.
New Balls, actually.
Yeah, that's one of those special clubs where you have to pay a membership to get around legalities and so forth. Every Friday night they're playing Who's in My Mouth.
Like which species is in my mouth or which part of the body? Be more specific.
Both. Why not?
Depends on the species, doesn't it?
You guys are killing me.
Open smorgasbord, like
it's a bit of a spoiler.
Yeah. What was the question?
Techman's our resident tentacle guy, so he would know. He'd be the best.
Oh no!
I've actually been getting really into.
You would be the best in that niche.
Porn, so I'll talk to you after.
You've been getting into what?
Wait, what?
Well, no.
Repeat it. I thought. Did I hear what I thought? Say it again, please.
So I just discovered or learned about through Reddit, obviously, the whole subculture of tentacle porn. And
okay, I did hear that.
Yeah. And so, to cut a long story short, working on a comic book that involves tentacles, and I feel like now I can cater to a new audience and expand my fan.
Alfie, you have just been caught in 4K. All right. Like,
I'm still actually just trying to understand how, at this point of existence in the internet, and you clearly not being like 8, that this is the first point you've come across tentacle porn.
I'm sorry, veteran. I'm sorry. I just watched Star Trek.
I mean, even Star Trek, man, Picard had the tentacles out. Like, it's inescapable.
Yeah. Let me. I have to look. We're just gonna have to. We're riding this train. Everybody's on. You can just hold on and deal with it. Alfie, I have to know what magical twist of fate happened for you to come across it and go, that's a thing.
If you're on Reddit long enough, that's all it takes.
There we go. Perfectly said. Jay, thank you.
Spend 10 minutes on Reddit and try not to come across shit like that.
Are you one of those people that went and turned off where people can see what you browse? I bet you did. You turned that off. Oh, no.
I'm far too lazy about that. And I know no one cares about what I'm looking at. So
wear it like a badge of honor. So at work, you're not hitting alt tab. Just like hell with it. I'm browsing what I'm browsing.
Exactly. I probably have about 1,400 tabs open, all a mix of Star Trek, tentacle porn.
Star Trek tentacle porn.
You got to be
somehow.
You do have to be careful about how you word that when you say things that you came across via Reddit, because
very good, very good.
So this is what I'm wondering. I'm wondering how I was steadily moving towards the point that I was making, where fans are talking about, well, let's get a redo of Star Trek, the original series, because we have Kirk, Spock, and Uhura. And I don't know how, but we ended up on hentai. Like, how the hell did that happen?
Hold on a minute now. I can answer that for you. And it can be summed up in very brief. And it's called Welcome to Trek Talk with Tech, Kirk, and Handy. And boom.
Oh, Jesus.
If we're in the mix, this is where the conversation is going. So
I just realized where Handy's name came from.
We are a very saucy crowd today, aren't we?
I think I stumbled into the wrong room.
What, Aaron?
I think I stumbled into the wrong room.
Yeah, right.
This is right, Aaron.
Or the right room. Depends on how you look.
So let's talk Klingon anatomy.
Oh, no.
All right. So anyway, we got to get back on track. I'll tell you what, if you guys want to continue this conversation, everybody jump on over to the Trek Talk Discord next Sunday at 11, and we will dick joke it up, because that's pretty much all we do.
Anyway, I have a lot to learn. I'll be there.
Come on down. So
it's 11 Eastern.
Yeah, 11 Eastern. I'm sorry. Yeah, we have 11 Eastern. So Jay, I'm sorry. Back on track.
Well, so that's what I've been hearing rumblings of already, is let's do another Star Trek, the original series, because now we have the Enterprise, we have Kirk, we have Spock, we have Uhura. We can very easily get in Sulu, Chekhov, Dr. McCoy. So essentially what the talk is that we have all these new series that we can do. We're on streaming. The sky's the limit, because they could pretty much do just about anything they want with Star Trek. And my thought with that is, of course, there's, and I even read some comment, I think it was on Reddit or Facebook. I think it was Facebook, about how Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where it ends, should be where we pick up and do the original series, or like a, fresh do of that. And I'm just thinking, okay, well, there would have to be a hell of a time jump, or Strange New Worlds would have to go on for like 10 seasons.
Yeah.
Because what are we, about 9 years or so before the events of the original series. So
correct.
That comment didn't make a lot of sense. So anyway.
Temporal's done.
Well, sure, they could do it. There's nothing keeping them from doing it after Strange New Worlds ends. You could certainly do that time jump. My question is that, are we as fans just not being satisfied with what we've got and continually wanting more and more and more? Aaron, with Tribbles and Transporters, I'd like to hear your take first on that. Are we being too greedy by not appreciating what we have now and just wanting more? Let's have more. Let's have the next thing.
Well, I will say, first of all, I'm kind of in a similar boat that Alfie is. I actually only watched first 2 or 3 episodes of Strange New Worlds. And then today I watched season 2, episode 6, and the 7 that just came out. So that's all I've seen of it. And as someone who's only seen that small amount of it, I'm not ready to be done with Pike and Una and all these other characters that we've brought in. I'm loving that dynamic. And to me, I love this version of Uhura. I think you can see that version of Uhura becoming the Uhura we've known. So yeah, I think we should just appreciate the great thing that's going on and know that, yeah, we're okay. So we're going back to before and it's semi a prequel, but why does it always have to end up with Kirk, Spock, McCoy? Yes, they're awesome characters, but we already had somebody attempt to revive those characters, and it created a big divide, I think, in a lot of Star Trek fans. Some who love it, some who hate it, and I'm sure there's some on the fence. But yeah, I think we can just go along and be happy with the characters we're getting. The same way that people were upset when TNG started. They said this isn't our Star Trek, this isn't our crew, where'd they go? And but then they grew to love them. And yeah, we went on from that, and we got a new crew on DS9, and we got a new crew on Voyager, and we got a new crew on Enterprise, and I kind of like that dynamic.
Yes.
That's a very good take. And I like what you said in regards to we're not done seeing the dynamic that we're getting now with Pike and Una and Mbenga, etc. And let's see more of that. Spanner, would like to hear your opinion on, are we asking too much? Are we not being grateful with what we have now?
Yeah, I think my feeling what's happening, this is a bit more kind of, this is Hollywood wide, is people, I'm going to say people our age, those sort of more mid to late Gen X.
Yeah, that's fair.
Are now running Hollywood. They've reached the age where these guys are pressing the button on green lights. Okay, people our age. They've got there at last. And we're very nostalgic people, aren't we? Everything used to be better. And we're totally hooked on retro. We're playing all the old video games again. We're watching all the old films. And we're rebooting all the stuff that we loved when we were kids because it was better. Okay. And in some respects, I'm quite enjoying it. Let's look at season 3 of Picard, for example. They got to this point with Picard, and they said, you know what? Fuck it. Give those nostalgic Gen Xers just what they want. Bring it all back. Put all the crew back on the bridge of the Enterprise D, and we'll, kind of loved it. But at the same time,
it was a critically acclaimed season.
Yeah, it was. But how many times can we do this? And also this is us being stuck in the past. This is the flip side of that coin. I think we're very much stuck in the past and struggling to move, to accept anything new in this respect. And even now, I think we're looking at Strange New Worlds, and let's bring back Kirk, and there was Scotty's voice on the intercom, and I feel like there's even the Star Wars stuff, the Mandalorian, Boba Fett. We'll bring back Boba Fett, and there's a point where we're going to take this too far. And I think bringing back TOS, as much as in principle, I can't have too much Star Trek, I can't have too much Kirk and Spock. Ultimately, I think, we should stop. We've got to, or not stop, but I think show some restraint. And I don't think we need it. I think better to spend that time, money, and effort on something new, as Erin said, which is what's actually made Star Trek keep going this long. We're now as far from Enterprise as Next Gen was from TOS. That way, it's been 20 years. It was 20 years between TOS and TNG.
Oh my God. Right? Oh shit, you're right.
You feel old now,
so
motherfucker.
And how long before where somebody saying, let's have, and I'm kind of into this idea, let's have an Archer series. We can see the beginnings of the Federation, but this is us. This is those people who are knocking on the door of 50 with all the money in Hollywood saying, let's just bring back what we had because it was better, and kids don't know they're born these days. So, yes, as much as I'm super into the idea, let's let it go. Let's let it be, and put that time and money and effort into something new, into some new Star Trek.
The thing is, people love nostalgia, but it is so easy to miss the mark when you try to recapture something. But my concern, if they try, is that it will fall incredibly short. Because I don't think, for example, the guy they have playing Kirk now, as much as I like him, he just doesn't have the same kind of wry smile that Shatner could pull off as Kirk. Things like there's just there are things where they would inevitably miss the mark, and yeah, I think an attempt to recreate that is going to fall short and just disappoint people. I think we were getting compelling, interesting interactions with people like Spock and Uhura, etc. already. And I think that beyond that, yes, putting effort into new IP, it's not new IP, but new series, as it were, would be more interesting from my perspective.
But don't
you think it's part of a broader problem? I think.
Hold on, what was that, Strange Kirk?
It's part of a broader problem that it's not exclusive to Star Trek. It's that we've been seeing it for the past probably about 10 years. Look at the video game industry. You got people out here that are paying $500 for a Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, by today's standards, it's a piece of shit, right? It's like a calculator compared to a Mac. So it's the nostalgia syndrome that's everywhere, and it's not exclusive to Star Trek. You're seeing it everywhere. Like Spanner said earlier, you got Star Wars, you got video gaming. Yeah, I got one of those too. Damn it,
Sega Genesis.
I remember playing it when it was still close to cutting edge. So, I just think that it is part of a broader problem. I think Spanner's right on the money with the fact that how far you can push that envelope and milk that cow, but eventually the milk's going to run out and it's going to be quite abrupt. And so do you keep going and surprise yourself and potentially ruin the course of that intellectual property as a whole because it starts failing so miserably that it's hard to get any sort of approval for anything new because, well, look at all this other failed shit you have. Or is it time to just go ahead and say, okay, we've done this. We're doing Strange New Worlds. You've had 3 or 4 people play Kirk throughout, the Star Trek, since Star Trek's inception. Is it time to say, okay, Kirk is cool and all, and this is obviously coming from a Kirk fan, but it's time to move on. We need to find another captain. We need to find a new ship. We need to find a new something.
Well, and I think that's what they've done, and in a sense, they've actually married both, right? We have members of the original series in terms of Spock or things like that on this, the Enterprise with Pike commanding it, but it's not Kirk commanding it, it's Pike. They're trying to blend both our desire for nostalgia without, offending people because people didn't like the Kelvin timeline Kirk in some ways either. I think Chris Pine did fine with what he was supposed to do, but you may not like that particular Kirk. But so they're trying to do a little bit of both. You're hitting nostalgia by looking at these characters, but you're also getting it from a new light with entirely new stories and a new captain so that you don't worry about sullying that particular vision because people are so very specific about the captains, be it Kirk, Picard, Sisko, etc. And so you can do similar things potentially even around some of the other franchises from Star Trek if they really wanted to keep trying to tap nostalgia without going back and necessarily ruining original series stuff, which I really honestly think if they ultimately try to redo Kirk, a TOS series, Kirk is captain, etc., they'll end up just treading on what they had originally created and turning people off to it.
Alfie, what do you think?
The original series.
I'm sorry, what was that, Spanner?
How can you compete with the original series? It's got 50 years of manic fandom behind it. It can only be worse, can't it? If they did not. Yeah, sorry.
And they're in danger of ruining the characters that are so beloved by squeezing them for every single drop of green Vulcan blood they have. I think personally what Star Trek is good at or has been in the past is maintaining some sort of essence of what is Star Trek. And I know there's a lot of pushback from fans when a new series is released, and it has been historically from every single series. Everyone's going like, not Star Trek. But they all had original characters when they were remaking the series, but they kept loyalty to what's been done already in the canon. They had the same tropes, and they had the same importance of the character development and the independent interactions between all the characters. So I think if moving forward, if they can do series which is honorable to the universe of Star Trek, but with new, fresh characters that eventually we'll grow to love, because, you know, as you said earlier, that people at first really didn't like Chris Pine as Kirk. But I think even now, over time, people are warming up to him as Kirk. But like I said, we don't need any more Kirks. Like, let's have some new characters that just give us the same feeling eventually as the original characters did, without trying to replace or even imitate what's already been done before. Evolve Star Trek like we evolve into the 23rd century or what. Nice. But don't stop giving us Star Trek, even if it's bad. Just keep going at it. And I think, you know, also, which has been really special about this reiteration or bringing back Star Trek, is they've made mistakes and they've listened to the audience to a degree, and they've adjusted. They've rotated when they've realized, or they've pivoted when they've realized that, okay, it's almost right, but it's not quite. And that's why Discovery is such a disaster, because they just couldn't really get it right. And I don't know if they're still working on trying to, but they're trying, and I appreciate that.
Discovery. But what I will say, like, I fundamentally agree. And what I think the important differentiator for me is, so each time they rolled out a new series, you know, obviously I'm not old enough to have watched TOS. Well, actually, not obvious. You guys have no idea, but I'm not. I didn't watch it when it first came out, but I watched TNG, I watched DS9, I watched Voyager, and each time, yes, there's a lot of, at first, I didn't like each iteration as much, and then it grew on me. And I think that's because you have the opportunity to let it be its own thing. And I think if they try to do TOS again, you're going to be going back too consistently to these characters are different than what I've seen when I went and watched it. And so rather than letting them grow on you and develop and be their own things, you're going to constantly be comparing them to what was and what you think they should be, or what your nostalgia says they ought to be. And so that's a much more uphill battle, in my opinion. So I really hope they don't try to do that.
But does anybody really want to just hear and see the same old thing over and over again? I mean, I don't
want the same people all over again.
I mean, I'm slightly autistic, so sometimes.
Okay, fair enough. You like your comfy zone, but most people don't.
But in the older times, there was a lot more episodes. So we had 45-minute episodes, and we had 26 episodes per season.
53-minute episodes, TOS.
Well, yeah, exactly. So it's a lot longer for you to let the characters to grow on you. But now, because of, you know, production expense, they concentrate on doing just like 10 episodes per season. And it doesn't give you the same time to, like, you know, really immerse yourself within the bridge crew and stuff, because it's not as much content, I guess. And it's way more dramatic than it used to be. And I think there's something kind of as a miss there, and a bit sad about not having so much.
It doesn't leave us much slack for the inevitable shit episodes, does it? You know, like if there's 26 episodes, you can afford to throw like a few sinkers in there.
Some bottle episodes, some bad ones.
Some experimenting.
Episodes, there's no room.
Each one has to be perfect.
Everyone has got to be spot on.
Spot on.
So that,
No warp 10 episodes in Voyager.
Oh God.
I was sitting here thinking, as the you know, Voyager fan in here, there are so many episodes I could go, yeah, people will pick on me for liking Voyager because of that episode.
Yeah. So what is it that we're expecting as I'm not saying I'm one of the fans that is thinking, a new visualization of TOS is what we could do, because here we've got this Star Trek Strange New Worlds is showing us what it could look like. But what's the expectation there? Are we going to take the list of all the episodes from TOS and say, okay, we're going to do this one and this one and this one and this one. We're going to do our version today of retreading these episodes just updating the visuals? Like, is that what we want? We want to see some of the best episodes of TOS basically rehashed each season, or do we think there are going to be other storylines? Of course, there's a lot more story there, but is that kind of,
I personally just want to see Strange New Worlds be Strange New Worlds. And yes, we can kick around with some of the characters that we'll later, know in TOS, but we can watch them develop to a degree. But other than that, let it be its own thing. And when it ends, it will end inevitably with Pike leaving, or maybe even there's a small transition phase or something, but whatever. But I don't want it to pick up and actually, unless it was like the last shot of the last scene of the series of Kirk taking the chair. Other than that, I don't want to see that.
I'm okay with a zoom out. So here's what I picture as the last scene, the last episode series finale of Strange New Worlds. And then this would be fine. Leave it at this. A zoom out on the bridge, Kirk in the chair, Spock, McCoy sending by him our new casted version of Scotty, Chekhov, Sulu, whatever it is. Look, okay, here's the send off. We know what's going to happen after this. That's it. Leave it alone. I don't want to see a whole series of an updated version of what we've already seen in the 60s. Let's focus on things like
Disney, with the live action. Right. Like no one wants that.
Yeah. Let's focus.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Aaron. Go ahead.
I just, you mentioning going back to the actual TOS episodes and saying, okay, we're going to do these, these 6, greatest hits or whatever. If you're going to do something like going back to TOS like that, why not literally go back to TOS and just tweak the visuals? Like if you want an updated TOS, just take it and, throw some CGI in there just to bump it up a little bit and refresh it.
They did that.
Did they do that a few years ago?
Yeah, they did for some of the exterior visuals of the space and stuff. But when you got on the planets, the surface, or trying to redo the Gorn and stuff, that would be an incredibly rough undertaking to a degree.
George Lucas the hell out of the thing.
I mean, it would be cool, but I don't know that people would push it. And plus, with nostalgia, some people, I don't know. I actually kind of like the old hokey stuff because it wasn't about the graphics and the science. It was about the subtle things, which is part of why I think Discovery never landed. It wasn't as subtle, but the things I mentioned this at some point before, but where you had things even given the political climate at the time, you had a Russian on the bridge, you had a black person, you had an alien, not even human, on the bridge, and they didn't make huge deals about it. They were just there. That's what you should expect. And that's what I liked.
They belong there. And that's why you don't make a big, nobody makes a big deal about it when the sun comes up, right? You're because it's supposed to every day. Let's just.
But there is something.
I do see that all the time. You have to put TOS back into context, don't you, to enjoy it? And actually, back then, in the 60s, those effects were pretty good.
That's what I was going to say. Watch it when you watch it. Through the lens of that time period. Watch it through the lens of the time period. And that's, I mean, of course, it's not going to stand.
One of my favorites, I bring this up all the time, no one smoked on the Enterprise. That was a big deal in the 60s. People were chain smoking on every show. And Roddenberry said, no, nobody will smoke in the future. At the time, it was stood out a mile that nobody had a fag in their hand, I was going to say. What should I say?
Cigarettes.
We know.
It's kindling or a cigarette or,
Cigarette, right. So nobody had one in their hand in Enterprise, in TOS. That was, you don't even notice now, do you? Nobody would even spot that one anymore. But at the time, it was a big deal because it also meant no sponsorship money from tobacco companies.
I'm sorry, Samantha.
No, go ahead.
Alfie, you were wanting to say something a little bit ago?
about how awesome you all are. I've completely forgotten. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
You forgot.
That's all right.
Well, this is something, Spanner, that I think you hit the nail. Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, Alfie.
Just really quick. Yeah, so with that being said, if you were to update the graphics and go back, there is a lot of questionable content there that it'd be really hard to look through the lens of today with updated graphics with what's actually been said. And I don't think it would resonate with, the next generation of people watching Star Trek, because it doesn't really make sense in this future. But it was, like you said, incredibly progressive comparatively to what was on at the time. But, just use that money, make more, whatever. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I was just saying that as if you have to do something new to TOS, that's the only thing you should do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could see that in terms of, yes, if you're going to do anything with TOS. But yeah, Alfie is right. Like, as much as it was much more progressive, it's still pretty sexist in many ways and stuff. And like, it would just be real hard to be like, okay, guys, we updated all these graphics and stuff, but released otherwise the same plot and everything, and the same actors. Is some of the stuff people would get in a tizzy about.
Well, and
it was like, we're going back in time. This isn't the future.
Yeah. Spanner, you said something that was really golden, is that we need to remember the context that was happening in the time of the original series that wouldn't apply now. We have to look at what was it about that time period you were talking about. For example, in the 60s, it was odd not to have a cigarette in your hand on TV or in some show. And I'm going to give you the perfect example of why doing a reboot or rehash is bad when you completely miss the mark on the context of the original. Now, this one goes back a little further. Some of the older of us will remember, but do you remember the 80s movie, Patrick Swayze, Red Dawn? You guys remember Red Dawn?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Red Dawn, classic from the 80s. Yeah, Wolverines. Well, so that movie, just give you a quick synopsis for anyone who hasn't seen it. This is an 80s movie.
You promised to do the bit at the end where he goes, "Avenge me, son. Avenge me." Will you do that for us when you finish?
No, because I'm a horrible actor. I would try. I just recently watched that movie, and this is what made me think of that in relation to what you said, Spanner. The movie was about the start of World War III, and Russia, along with Cuban and South American allies, invaded the U.S. The UN had been dissolved. America was basically on its own. Then this invasion happened. And part of what made it successful is that all of your immigrants that were coming in from the South basically were kind of like sleeper agents. People were coming in, getting these jobs, getting into places where they could help facilitate the successful invasion. Now, here's the thing about Red Dawn is this was in the 80s during the Cold War, where we had drills of missiles coming in and the Russians invading. We freaking had drills where we would hide under the desks in school. And we did all this because it was very possible. There was always that possibility hiding in there that this could happen, and it was realistic. And that's why in the 80s, you had so many movies that had that flavor of the Russia arc, the Russian bad guys. They were realistic. They were great antagonists.
Translate today, though, if we're being honest.
And that's what's taken me to the remake. There's a remake, and Chris Hemsworth was in it, who played George Kirk in Star Trek 2009. So the remake of Red Dawn, I haven't seen it. I've been meaning to, but haven't. But I've heard enough of it where essentially the antagonist, the invading army of this movie are the North Koreans. And here's the thing: so you look at it today. What country, what nationality, which people would have the most likelihood of invading the U.S. And you sit around at the Hollywood writing table and you say, nobody in today's time. We have no military equals like we do with Russia. Okay, well, the closest we've got are North Korea. Okay, let's say North Korea. And then they go with it. And apparently we're supposed to think that North Korea is a threat enough to challenge and invade the U.S. And here's the problem is nobody is believing that. So here's where you have an issue of doing a remake and not having the cultural context that made the original so good. That's the problem. Hollywood sees these dollar signs. They see, okay, everything's being remade and rebooted. Let's go through the catalog and see what could we update. Oh, here's this great movie, Red Dawn. Let's update that and make it for the present times. And some millennial is writing this with absolutely no context that the original plot line of that first one was very realistic. It could have happened. Yes, the Russians could have done that. They could have teamed up with the Cubans and Mexicans, South Americans, and done that. Today, I know when I watch that movie, I'm going to be saying to myself the whole time, this makes no sense because there is no goddamn way in hell that this would ever happen. And that is a remake that has lost the point of why the original was so good.
So
I think this is going back to what I was saying about people our age being the ones holding the purse strings in Hollywood. And that's that guy saying, oh, when I was a kid, Red Dawn was awesome. We loved it. We all watched it all the time. Let's remake that. Here's the money. It was his decision, and it was a bad decision, and they could do that. They could do exactly the same thing with TOS. It's our generation that are making these mistakes, I think.
That's also that dovetails potentially into an interesting conversation about monetization in Hollywood and how it's impacted things. Because honestly, I haven't seen the latest Red Dawn, but if it is North Korea instead of, say, China, then that decision based on military capacity alone would have been made to use North Korea purely from a fiscal perspective to not offend China. Which does actually speak to a little bit the current day climate.
Yes, we don't want to offend the Chinese. Handy, I saw your profile lighten up a couple times. Were you wanting to say something, or was that just your talk out? Yep.
He probably recorded.
No, I'm not. Just on voice activity, but I probably got talked over.
No, what do you want to say?
I was just chiming. It didn't matter. Earlier, I said China when you were coming up with an example.
China.
Anyway.
Yeah. China would have been a good choice. It would have been a more realistic choice. The problem is that all of our electronics and everything else comes from China. We cannot piss off China or we're going to really suffer the consequences. So there you go. That's why the realistic choice of the few choices you had was one that economically we couldn't make mad, because last time we pissed off China, they sent COVID-19 over our way as a lesson.
Ooh.
Are we going to go there?
No. We could also talk about, we do get a lot of manufactured electronics from Taiwan. Now let's talk about, is Taiwan China?
Well,
we're turning into the political podcast.
Here's the deal. I want you to also remember that while we do get a lot of electronics from China, they also are fed because of us. So people tend to forget that.
No, there is symbiosis there, but there is still
us. Who is us? Because
all of us. Don't you love rice?
I'm sure.
Don't you like going to Chinese buffet?
I'm sure you're in your electronics over there, Alfie.
Yeah, it is. It's a symbiotic relationship. Whether you love it or hate it, it's what it is. I'm sorry, Alfie, your mic didn't pick up.
I'm just done with the China dissing. Let's just all be friends now.
Yeah.
No, I'm not dissing China. I'm literally just pointing out that when they remade that movie, in order to avoid potentially upsetting them by even implying that they may try to invade us.
I get that. They're very precious about the media in which, especially if you want to make money and sell the movie to China,
exactly.
They need to make sure you keep them happy and wanting to see the movie. Otherwise, it won't be shown there. Simple.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. Well, so we're getting close here to an hour on our discussion. So wanted to see if anyone else had any further thought, any point that they wanted to make that they may have forgot about or just thought of, anything like that. We can go around the room, around the table here to add in any extras.
There's a request to speak from
you guys. Stop at an hour.
Yeah, man, it's Sunday. We got stuff we want to do. It's nice outside.
Look at this tightly controlled ship, not going all over the place with,
Big J runs it
terrible.
Actually, it sounded better in my head.
With Big J and the big chair, we're kept on topic here.
That's right. This is organization to a T. It's not like the military, but here's the thing. I've got kids, and I think I just fall into that structured, all right, we need to do this. We need to have time for that. If we screw around too much, then we, miss something. So, it's just
kind of think of you as
challenge accepted.
The Spanner, you think of me as the what?
The SPN dad. We all do. You're a father figure to all of us.
The SPN dad. I like that. I can do that.
Dad.
Captain Dad. Well, guys, it's been a great talk, great discussion. As always, it's great to talk with some of the member podcasts for the Starfleet Podcast Network. And for those of you listening or watching, please visit our website, starfleetpodcast.net, and you'll get more information on our members, which are Beyond Trek Podcast, Tribbles and Transporters, Highly Illogical, Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk, the Duras Sisters was a new member of ours. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it to this, which is a shame. We'll get them on at some point here soon, but we are going to be growing and doing this monthly like we have been. So starfleetpodcast.net, you can get more about us. And thank you all for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. And as always, live long and prosper.
Sure.